right. We are recording. Hey guys, thank y'all so much. I know it's been a long time since the Container Life podcast has been about, but we are relaunching now. We are not waiting to start a new year to get our podcast up and running. And tonight we have some awesome information to share with you guys. Super excited. For starters, I'm Jessica Lewis. You guys know I'm the co-owner of Mobu Enterprises, where we build anything and everything out of shipping containers, but we're also in the green construction industry, and this podcast is designed to showcase all of our experts that's in this green space, because the more you know, the less you can say, I'm killing Mother Earth and I had no clue. So with that being said, our new motto is Go Green or Die. We're excited about that for this upcoming season. And guess what, guys? I'm going to turn it over to our co-host and guest for the night so he can share who he is and how he does what he does. And then we're going to go into these really great questions that he and I prepare for tonight, because we want you guys to be very enlightened and empowered to be a part of a community, and we'll talk about that later. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rex.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Rex Knickerbocker, and a little background, I was a homeschooled kid in the 90s. So went to college at the University of Utah, did electrical engineering. And then after that, I kind of just meditated. I had a financial cushion that I was able to not work. And I really just didn't work for 4 years, just trying to decide what was worth working on. I kind of didn't think that regular work was for me, just for money's sake. So I came up with, after thinking about it for a long time, I came up with the idea that technology is fixing a lot of problems, but some problems are getting worse. Kind of like back in the day, technology that made us able to be lazy made it so that we needed gyms and we needed to exercise separately from our job. That is happening today with, I believe, with community. And community is something that technology sometimes helps, but I think on balance, it's actually worse, because we no longer need each other for the same things that we did before. And our connection with each other now is more simply just to be connected, because we can ultimately survive without each other in some ways. And maybe you'll notice when you go to the grocery store, you no longer have to talk to anyone if you choose not to. That's just one example. Another example is if you get a flat tire, now you can solve it with a debit card and a call to your insurance, as opposed to kind of needing to have good relationships with your friends so that you didn't have to sit out there as long. So those are good examples to me, and I think that community is really important, and that's kind of how I came at this green construction method that I'll be sharing today. So back to you. We'll get to some questions, and then I can explain more that these viewers might find interesting, and we'll have a link in the description if you guys want to get involved with me and either help pre-order things to help the financial end, or even just help spreading the word and even working for us, because we do have openings.
He is hiring. You heard that. So thank you for sharing your introduction. Now we're going to get deep into what today's topic is. Today, guys, we're talking about Earthship communities. So Rex, tell us what that means to you and how that fits into your world.
So Earthships, the word Earthship, when I first saw it, are these underground or semi-underground structures that typically they're high labor intensive to create, but then they have a lot of, they're kind of passive house certified by the nature of the fact that they're basically underground. And they collect rainwater, and they have plants on the inside, and that is amazing in its own right. And when I tried to marry it with my version of community, what I needed to do was separate out the thermal benefits of that structure, the passive house type benefits, separate that out from the labor cost to get them built, and also to allow for people to live mobile, so to be able to bring, let's say, their RV with them. So what we resulted in is what would be the shell of an Earthship, bring your own kitchens and bathrooms. And it's basically like a luxury RV stall wherein you've got climate control year round and you can grow a garden.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you go a little bit in more detail visually on what it looks like, what an Earthship looks like? I'm not sure if our viewers can understand that, but in the meantime, while you're talking, I'm going to pull up a picture, okay?
Okay, perfect. So the typical Earthship she's going to show you, and it basically looks like someone put a mound of dirt and then they dug a cave out in it and put some windows on the south-facing side and a door so they could use the interior space. What we're going to end up doing is basically the roof is going to be greenhouse-esque, it's just going to have greenhouse plastic. So your roof is going to be clear with occasional, seasonally you might put a solar shade cloth on top. But the walls themselves are going to be nearly 20 feet tall and 10-foot thick dirt. And we've got them built one right next to the other so that you have a 10-foot thick wall between every unit. And it almost looks like a big parking lot, just extra large, where every single parking stall is 4,000 square feet. And it's semi-underground because the walls, are built up. But you drive in at grade level, you drive right into your unit. Yeah, that was a good picture of one Earthship. I've seen quite a few. There's a place called in Arizona, Earthship Biotecture, and they've been working on Earthships for a long time. There's also some for sale for $1 million for an Earthship. That's nothing like what I want to do. I want it to be very inexpensive.
I was going to say our green followers want to understand that they can afford it. So my next question to you is, what made you get into the Earthship concept, and how do these sustainable dwellings contribute to the environmental friendly aspects of green construction? So what made you get into it, and how do you consider it green, and how does it contribute to the green space?
Okay, so perfect. The way I got into it was me deciding that to solve community, kind of as I shared at the beginning of this, community is important to me. To make it so that people can live next to neighbors that they like. That's another way to explain my version of what I think good community is. I wanted to make it so that more people could get involved and that it would be scalable in terms of how fast it is to construct these and how easy it is to supply the materials to construct these. And I wanted people to be able to live mobile, because eventually I want to have an algorithm kind of like a Match.com married with an Airbnb, so that, and it's just for friends, not for lovers, but basically you would have this Airbnb Match.com algorithm that helps people decide, or at least incentivizes them with a really steep discount if they find themselves in a certain area during certain times. And that encourages the same type of people or harmonious types of people to go to a certain place. And then I don't have any built-in icebreakers, how they're going to get to know each other. I just really assume that if you're standing right next to someone that's really, really compatible with you, I think you're just going to get to know them. So that's my belief, is that once you're close enough to each other and you can start to have those conversations, you're going to get to know those people. And so how did I get into it? That was the why. And then this ended up being a solution to try and allow people to join this movement, where if they're stuck at a job, then they're not going to be able to be as mobile unless they have remote work. So for those who don't have remote work yet, then this is a way where you could essentially maybe work a couple weeks a year to pay for your cell phone bill. But you could grow your own garden. You could live inside of a climate-controlled structure that the climate control comes with it. You would, if you wanted to keep paying for it, you could do that route, or you could just invest up front the total amount necessary to have basically a lifetime access to somewhere safe, warm, somewhere where you can grow a garden. No utilities bills, no other bills. Apparently, I mean, bills that you'd have is survival bills. I mean, that's people that have other bills. I think that maybe you should work for those, but I'm kind of the opinion myself that it really sucks that a lot of us have to work to survive. I think that it's kind of a bad deal for humanity, and we've been living that way for too long.
I agree. And so when we talk about community building, how do you see the Earthship concept contributing to community? And also, what do you think could be some successes or even possible challenges that one may experience with Earthship communities?
So I think that the community Earthship model is great when it comes to mobile living, because we can put these communities in places that maybe the land is cheaper because it's a little further from the city and there's no infrastructure. But if we build a destination where the infrastructure we need is already there, starting with the off-grid mentality allows you to do that really simply. You say, oh, well, we need power. Well, bring your own power, or set up solar panels, as opposed to contact a power plant and get them to install, utilities to your area. So starting with the off-grid mentality gives us freedom as to where we build, and going along with sorry about that. So going along with
it's a family affair, guys. Just know it's a family affair. He's not alone. The kids, generational community building. The kids are in it.
Thank you so much. Yes, so off-grid allows us freedom of where we put communities, and we can even buy better land than is normally thought of as being somewhere you would stay, just because of the location. It's kind of too far from anything. And then green building is also kind of goes along with simple building. So these structures are using very few material numbers. We're not looking at a build list of 100 items that we need. We are going to use the dirt that's there. We're going to use some string to reinforce our structure. That could be any type of string. We're going to use initially baling twine because it's readily available and it's cheap. Later on, we could build our own with recycled materials or with hemp or anything like that. We're wrapping this twine in a big spool that's 10-foot diameter and about 20-foot tall. And then that spool, we're going to put some stucco or cob on the outside. And that way we'll have a big shell that will be stacking these one right after the other. And that's how we're getting a wall out of string and cement and dirt that we take from the site and just fill them with dirt. That gives you your wall. And then the roof, I had two options. I could build trusses and install them on top and cover that with plastic. Or the other option was build the walls taller and hang the roof. And for now, that seems to be the most simple path forward for the construction process to make things go faster. So that's the plan right now, is to hang the roof, put the plastic on top and a gutter in the middle, and allow all that water to be collected.
I like that. So can you explain to the listeners about geothermal integration, since we're just talking about some of the processes of how it's being built? My question is, how does geothermal energy play a role in construction of earthships, and what advantages does it bring for that type of build?
Perfect. So there are a few different ways that you can use the heat or cool, the constant temperature of the earth to keep your climate temperate inside whatever structure you've built. One of those methodologies is to dig very long loops and just fill them with pipe and blow air through the pipe. So you could blow air underground. If you blow it far enough and it's 5 or 6 feet underground, you're going to be getting cold air. Another methodology is called water source heat pumps. Instead of an air source heat pump like you would normally have, or air conditioner for a house, water source instead exchanges that heat with a body of water instead of with the outside air. That ends up being a lot more efficient because water has a lot more thermal conductivity, thermal density, energy density, and we can access the aquifer below us to cycle the water in the aquifer. So every unit will have access to that constant temperature from the aquifer below, because we're going to be constantly cycling the 2 water wells. You can pull water up one well and push it down the other well. During the summer, you can heat that water as you cool your greenhouses, and before you put it all the way back down into the ground. You could even heat it up more in the summer. Put that water into the well, and you're actually preheating the thermal mass down near that side of the well, and then you reverse directions in the winter. So you're pulling from a little bit warmer aquifer water. It's going to be all relatively similar temperature no matter what in the aquifer. But yeah, we can preheat and pre-cool those 2 wells, and you put those 2 wells in your community. You don't. Every unit doesn't have to dig its own 2 wells, but the whole community as a whole needs to have 2 wells, one on one side, one on the other side, where they can cycle the water from the aquifer and gain unlimited access to that heat source or cooling source, depending on what your needs are. It's typically around 60 degrees or less of water.
I like that. And tell us how the earthship concept is in alignment with regenerative design principles.
I'm going to have to ask you what regenerative design principles are.
So regenerative are just basically sustainable design principles. So how does that earthship concept fall in alignment with the reuse of maybe materials or some of those methods that you just mentioned with creating reservoirs for water to be collected? How else in that earthship design are you seeing it using certain methods that encourage us to be more sustainable?
Awesome. Yeah. So that's a good example. The water, I think this is interesting. They have water consumption rules in certain areas. You can only consume a certain amount. But my observation is that you don't actually deplete or use up water. Oftentimes you just change its shape. So production of something would mean you took a product before it was worth a certain amount, and then by the time you were done with it, it was worth more. Now you're a producer. You didn't necessarily create atoms, but you took water and you made it more pure or better. And then a consumer would be someone that took potable water, and by the time they're done with it, it's wastewater. So it's not as useful as it was before. So I like to call that upcycling and downcycling. Yeah. And then recycling is just, that's what's happening there. So with respect to water, what we use in our day-to-day life in this community would be used to water the plants, and all of our wastewater, they have this thing called biodigestation, and what that is composting, but in a wet bath instead of in a dry heap. And so inside that wet bath, what happens is a lot of gases, methane gases, come up out of that as it decomposes. By the time it's done decomposing, it's really good fertilizer. So we're reusing basically all the vegetation, even after we've eaten it, all the vegetation that we are able to grind up and put in that biodigester is going to turn into methane and fertilizer. The methane can be burnt in a stove, like you can cook with it, so it doesn't go to waste. And it doesn't really smell bad as it burns either. And then the fertilizer goes back in the garden. And in other terms of using, I think the fact that we're really building out of dirt, I mean, everything comes from dirt or mining of some kind, but then it goes through a bunch of processes to turn into drywall and paper. And I mean, to get paper, you have to grow trees first. There's a whole lot of processes, whereas what we're doing is we're taking the dirt and we're not changing much other than its shape, because we're going to dig it up and put it in the wall, and that's going to be it. So we're really just keeping low usage of materials, like in the grand scheme of things. We don't plan on using too many different types of materials because we can get away from it, and it's actually very inexpensive once we do that. Like, twine is cheap, greenhouse plastic is cheap, cement or adobe cob is cheap with respect to what we're able to do with it, since we're just creating these big bags essentially, or big buckets, and filling them with dirt from on site. That's the plan.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate our part 1 of our conversation, guys. I need y'all to come back to see part 2. We're going to go over blockchain technology, future trends, and education around these Earthship communities in the construction and the use of that blockchain technology within those systems. So we'll be back very shortly. Thank y'all for listening, and stay tuned. Make sure you come back for part 2. Thank you. So we're going to stop recording.